The last guest left around 8:45. I remember the time exactly, because I was standing by the window with a glass of wine that I hadn't touched, watching the taillights disappear into the October night. The house had gone quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful, just hollow, like the laughter and clinking glasses and soft jazz had been **ket out, leaving a vacuum behind. Our dining room was still in its post-party chaos. Half-empty wine bottles, smudged glasses, napkins crumpled like discarded secrets. The kind of scene that should feel satisfying after a successful evening. But I didn't feel satisfied. I felt unsettled. Emily, my wife, was in the kitchen, her heels clicking softly on the tile as she moved around, tidying up. She hadn't said much after the door closed behind our last guest. Not her usual humming, not the cheerful banter she always tossed my way after a dinner party. Just silence. I started stacking plates, more to distract myself than anything else. I could feel something in the room that hadn't been there before, something I couldn't name yet. Then she appeared. She walked over, slow and deliberate, holding a small white dessert plate. On it was a slice of leftover cake from the celebration, a simple layered chocolate raspberry mousse, her favorite. I looked up, about to thank her or maybe joke about how we both knew she hated leftovers, when I saw the fork. There, resting on the edge of the plate, was a stainless steel dessert fork, and smeared along the middle tine was a faint but unmistakable streak of lipstick. Deep Berg *NDY, almost wine-colored. Color she hadn't worn tonight, or ever, for that matter. I blinked, staring at the smear. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't a shadow or sauce or a trick of the light. It was lipstick. And unless one of the guests had accidentally reapplied lipstick mid-dessert and put their used fork back in the drawer, something I found hard to imagine, then it didn't make sense. "Here," she said. Her voice trembled just slightly. She placed the plate in front of me like a peace offering. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I looked at her. Her face was still made up, but barely hanging on. The mascara under her eyes had smudged into faint shadows, and her eyeliner was cracked at the corners. Not from crying, at least not recently. But from where? Like someone who'd been hiding emotion behind a mask all night and finally let it slip. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes, red around the edges, darted from the plate to me, then away. And then came the scent. I hadn't noticed it until she stepped closer. A perfume. Sweet. Floral. Not the clean citrus tones she usually wore. This was heavier. More mature. Like something from a boutique store tucked away behind velvet curtains. It clung to her skin in a way that suggested it hadn't been applied hours ago, but recently. It didn't belong in our home. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, but nothing came out. "Whose is this?" I asked quietly, motioning to the fork. I could feel my voice hardening against my will. "This lipstick isn't yours." She stared at the plate like she hadn't really looked at it until now. When her eyes finally met mine, something flickered. Not surprise, not confusion, annoyance. "You're being paranoid," she said. Quick, defensive. She crossed her arms and took a step back like she was bracing herself. "Seriously, Mark, are you doing this again? You're ruining the whole mood." I didn't answer. "You always think something's going on," she continued, now pacing slightly. "You build these stories in your head and then look for any little thing to confirm them. It's exhausting." I looked down at the plate again. The cake sat perfectly untouched, its decorative raspberry curl intact. The fork had clearly been used, which meant she hadn't just grabbed it from the drawer randomly. She had picked up someone's used fork and deliberately served it to me, where she hadn't noticed, or she had. "I'm just asking a question," I said carefully. "You didn't wear lipstick tonight. This fork has lipstick on it, and it smells like you're wearing someone else's perfume." Her face changed at that. Just a flicker of something tight in the jaw, a narrowing of the eyes, but then it vanished under a thin smile. "Oh my God," she said, laughing bitterly. "That's your big evidence? A fork and some perfume? This is what you're doing now? I brought you cake, and you're treating me like I'm on trial?" She threw her hands up and turned away from me, walking to the sink with sharp, clipped footsteps. The sound of water running filled the silence, but it did nothing to cool the heat rising in my chest. "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said. "Could have fooled me." I stood slowly and walked to the counter, plate still in hand. I placed it beside her, watching the way her shoulders tensed. "Where did this fork come from?" I asked. She didn't answer, just kept her back to me. "You picked it up from the table, right? So whose was it?" Still no answer. "Emily." She turned around then, and for a moment I thought she might actually break. Her eyes were glassy, like a dam ready to crack, and for the briefest second, I saw fear in her expression. Real fear. But then she blinked, and just like that it was gone. Replaced with something else. Something sharper. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" she said. "You need there to be something wrong. You always do. I try to make this night nice, and you twist it into some weird conspiracy theory because of a fork." Her voice had risen slightly, and she took a step toward me, arms crossed tight over her chest like armor. "This is what you do, Mark. You look for cracks that aren't there. You ruin every good thing before it even has a chance to last." I wanted to argue, to tell her that I wasn't making things up, that I wasn't just seeing things because of some deep insecurity. But I couldn't, because somewhere inside, I had already crossed over from doubt to certainty. I didn't know what the truth was yet, but I knew the feeling, the unmistakable tug in my gut that said something wasn't right, that something foreign had found its way into our marriage, and it had brought a new scent, a new voice, and a lipstick that wasn't hers. She brushed past me, muttering something under her breath, and disappeared down the hallway. I stood alone in the kitchen, still staring at the fork. The cake remained untouched. That night, after she disappeared into the bedroom and shut the door, softly, deliberately, I stayed in the kitchen with the lights off. I sat at the table, hands folded, just staring at the faint outline of that fork in the shadows, the red smear barely visible in the glow of the microwave clock. You'd think something like this would be loud, that the moment you realize something is breaking in your marriage would arrive with shouting, tears, or the slamming of doors. But it wasn't like that. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet where your own heartbeat starts sounding like a warning drum in your ears. I didn't touch the cake. I didn't clean the plate. I didn't throw the fork away. I left it all right there on the counter like a crime scene preserved, because I needed time to think. Not react, just think. It's funny what your brain does when it finally catches up to your instincts. Things I'd brushed off weeks, maybe months, ago started creeping back, like the light in the attic slowly flicking on. I told myself none of it mattered, that it was just stress or distance or something we'd grow out of. But now every one of those little moments felt like a breadcrumb I'd ignored. First, there were the late nights. She used to be the one waiting up for me. She'd text me if I was late leaving work, sometimes even fall asleep on the couch with the TV on. But lately, it had flipped. Now she was the one coming in late, offering vague explanations that didn't hold together if you poked at them for more than 5 seconds. "Just had to finish something at the office," she'd say. Or, "Carla needed help with something. I couldn't leave her hanging." The excuses came easy, but they didn't sound like her. Carla? She hated Carla. They barely talked outside of meetings. And if she really had that much work, why didn't she bring it home like she used to? Then there was the phone. She used to leave it on the kitchen counter at night, face up. If someone texted, the screen would light up and she wouldn't think twice about it. Now, it was always face down. Always, like she was hiding something. And if I happened to glance at it when it lit up, she'd pull it away and pretend like it was nothing. Just spam or work stuff or a notification that didn't matter. She started going into the bathroom with it too. That was new. Long showers. Long enough that I'd knock sometimes just to make sure she was okay. Only for her to say, "I'm fine, just relaxing," in a voice that always sounded a little too rehearsed. There was a night about 3 weeks ago, I'd forgotten until now, when I woke up around 2:30 in the morning to get water. The house was dark. Still. But when I passed the stairs, I swear I heard the front door click shut. I paused, thinking maybe I imagined it. But when I looked out the front window, There was a figure just barely visible down the sidewalk, moving quickly. No jacket, just a hoodie and sneakers. I told myself it wasn't her, that it couldn't be, that maybe it was a neighbor or someone walking their dog late. But I knew better. She was back in bed when I returned to the room. I never asked where she'd gone. I think I was afraid of the answer. And then, of course, there was the perfume. The one I smelled earlier. It wasn't from tonight alone. It had shown up maybe a week ago. Subtle at first, clinging to her scarf. A floral scent, heavy and unfamiliar. She claimed it was a sample she got from the office. "Do you like it?" she asked. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were fixed on me like she was trying to gauge my reaction. "Sure," I said. "It's different." Different good or different weird? I didn't answer. I didn't want to lie. But now I wonder if she wore it for me at all. Or if she wore it for someone else and was just testing whether I'd notice. That's the thing about these kinds of betrayals. They rarely show up as smoking G***ness. It's the small shifts, the flickers in routine, the glances that don't last quite as long. People don't change all at once. They fracture quietly. And the more I thought about it, the more fractures I found. She changed her coffee. It seems stupid, right? But it used to be the same routine every morning. She'd grind the beans we bought from that little shop downtown, the one with the funny French name neither of us could pronounce, and drink it with just a splash of oat milk. 2 weeks ago, she started buying fancy bottled cold brews. Vanilla, caramel, hazelnut. Stuff she used to call overpriced sugar water. I asked her what happened to the old stuff and she shrugged, said she wanted something lighter. But then I noticed the receipts. Dresses, makeup, jewelry, and not the kind she'd ever worn around me. She started coming home with shopping bags tucked under her arm like they were a secret she didn't know how to hide yet. Once, I caught a glimpse of the tag on a dress before she hung it in the back of her closet. It was red, lace-trimmed, expensive. I'd never seen her wear it. Not once. Not on our anniversary, not on her birthday. Not for me. So who was it for? The pieces were all there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. And now, as I sat in the dark of our kitchen replaying every missed signal, every shrug, every sidestep of hers, I started to feel it in my chest. That cold realization that the person I thought I knew might not be the person sleeping down the hall. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for the moonlight to shift across the floor. Long enough for the silence to start feeling like company instead of absence. Eventually, I stood and walked over to the fork. It sat there on the plate like a dare, like it wanted to be noticed. I picked it up with a napkin and stared at the smudge again. I'm not a forensic scientist, but I know my wife. And this wasn't her shade. It wasn't even close. She went for subtle nudes or soft pinks. This was bold. This was brazen. And for a second I wondered, had it even come from the party? Or had it already been in the kitchen? Used by someone who was never supposed to leave a trace? I placed the fork in a Ziploc bag. I don't know why. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was anger. Or maybe part of me needed a totem. Something physical. Something to remind me that I wasn't crazy. That the voice inside me, the one whispering that something was wrong, wasn't a delusion. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I returned to our room, slid into bed next to her, and stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to her soft breathing beside me like it was the ticking of a countdown clock. And in that silence, I promised myself something. No more ignoring. No more pretending. If she was hiding something, I was going to find it. I woke up before dawn the next morning, though woke up isn't really the right phrase. I don't think I ever slept. My eyes had stayed fixed on the faint glow of the alarm clock, each minute dragging itself across the screen like a wound reopening. Emily lay beside me, turned away, her breathing slow and even. In another time, that sound would have been comforting. Last night, it sounded like distance. I slipped out of bed carefully, feet touching the cold wood floor, and made my way to the kitchen. The plate was still there, the fork sealed in a Ziploc like some ridiculous evidence bag from a crime drama. Seeing it again made my stomach tighten. I poured myself coffee but didn't drink it. My hands shook too much. I had told myself last night that I was done ignoring things, that I was going to start seeing clearly. But it's one thing to make a promise to yourself in the dark and another to actually follow through in the daylight. When the morning light seeped into the kitchen, my resolve wavered. I almost talked myself out of it. Almost. It was the sound of her footsteps upstairs that snapped me back. Soft, hesitant. Then the creak of the closet door. She was getting ready for work. I thought about the countless times she'd left this house telling me she had late meetings, work dinners, errands. How many of those were true? How many weren't? I couldn't keep living like this, not knowing. And then I remembered something. Something small, buried deep in the back of a drawer. Her old phone. Emily had upgraded about a year ago. She transferred everything over to the new one, reset the old one, and shoved it into the bottom drawer of her nightstand. Or at least that's what she said. I hadn't thought about it in months. But this morning, for reasons I couldn't explain, it popped into my head like a whisper. I left the kitchen and padded down the hallway, heart hammering against my ribs. Our bedroom door was open. Emily was in the bathroom, blow dryer running, the white noise of it masking my movements. I went straight to the nightstand, opened the bottom drawer, and there it was. A slim black rectangle, scuffed on the edges, half buried under old receipts and a tangle of charging cords. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It was heavier than I remembered. The screen was dark, smudged with fingerprints. I pressed the power button, expecting nothing, expecting it to be wiped clean like she'd told me. But the screen lit up with her old lock screen wallpaper. A photo of us at the lake 2 summers ago, smiling in the sun like strangers I used to know. My breath caught. She hadn't wiped it. I typed in her old passcode. It worked. The home screen appeared, cluttered with apps she no longer used. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. Texts? Emails? Photos? Part of me hoped I'd find nothing. That it would all be some embarrassing mistake. That the fork, the perfume, the late nights, somehow were just coincidences strung together by my paranoia. But then I opened the Messages app. There, nestled between old conversations with friends and coworkers, was a thread labeled simply Thomas. No last name, just Thomas. I scrolled up. The messages started months ago. At first, they were innocent enough, work talk, jokes, the kind of harmless banter you might have with a colleague. But then they shifted. Compliments, late-night check-ins, private jokes I didn't understand. My pulse roared in my ears as I scrolled further. "You shouldn't have left," she had written one night at 1:32 a.m. "We could have stayed together." His reply came seconds later. "Next time. I hate sneaking around." My stomach lurched. Further down, another exchange. "Tonight was perfect," Thomas wrote. "You looked incredible. I still smell your perfume." Her reply, "Stop. You'll get me in trouble. I haven't figured out how to explain everything at home yet." I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen. Everything at home. That was me. That was our life. She was talking about me like I was some obstacle to be managed. It didn't stop there. Message after message, weeks of them, painting a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. Late-night rendezvous. Shared hotel rooms. Promises to figure it out soon. Even little jokes at my expense. "He's clueless," she had written once. "He thinks I'm working late again, lol." I had to sit down. My knees wouldn't hold me. It was like watching a movie where you're the punchline, but you don't know it until the credits roll. All those nights she said she was tired. All the times she brushed off my questions. All the times she made me feel paranoid. Like I was imagining things. They were building a world behind my back, and I'd been living in its shadow. I scrolled to the top of the thread. The first message from Thomas was dated almost a year ago. A year. That's how long this had been going on. Longer than I'd even suspected. And then I saw it, the most recent message sent just 2 nights ago. "Same place Friday? I miss you already." Her reply, "Yes. Can't wait. Don't text me after this, he's been suspicious." The phone felt heavy in my hands, like it was made of lead. My vision blurred. My heart felt like it was folding in on itself. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a single bad decision. This was a full-scale betrayal, methodical and sustained. A second life. A version of her I'd never met. The blow dryer upstairs shut off. I snapped out of my trance, locked the phone, and shoved it back into the drawer exactly as I'd found it. My hands were slick with sweat. I closed the drawer slowly, quietly, like sealing a coffin. Then I walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the table. The coffee had gone cold. The fork in its plastic bag stared at me like an accusation. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, the weight of everything pressing down on me like wet cement. When Emily came downstairs a few minutes later, she looked the same as always. Hair straightened, blazer on, travel mug in hand. She smiled at me, that same practice smile she'd been using for weeks. "Morning," she said brightly. I looked at her and saw the text messages superimposed over her face. "I haven't figured out how to explain everything at home yet. He's been suspicious. Can't wait." "Morning," I managed. She kissed me on the cheek as she passed, the scent of that unfamiliar perfume trailing behind her like a ghost. And for the first time, I didn't feel suspicion. I didn't feel doubt. I felt certainty. The next morning felt like a set from a play I didn't audition for. Everything in the house looked the same. The coffee maker sputtering out its last drops, the light slanting through the blinds, the sound of the neighbor's car starting outside. But all of it felt hollow, like props in a scene I couldn't step out of. The difference was inside me. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. Emily came down the stairs at exactly 7:15 a.m. Hair still damp at the ends, wearing her navy blazer and the pearl earrings I'd given her for our anniversary. She looked composed. Too composed. Like someone who had practiced looking normal. Her travel mug clinked softly as she set it on the counter. "Morning," she said, her voice cheerful in that clipped way she'd started using lately. "Did you sleep okay?" I stared at her over the rim of my mug. The coffee inside was cold and bitter, but I drank anyway, if only to buy myself a few seconds. "Fine," I said. She busied herself with her bag, slipping her laptop in, checking her phone, checking her reflection in the microwave door. She didn't look at me. I wondered if she knew, if she could feel that something had shifted overnight, if she could tell by my silence that the walls of her second life had finally cracked. "You're quiet," she said without turning around. "Everything okay?" I set the mug down, slow and deliberate. "We need to talk." That made her pause. Her hands froze mid-motion, fingers still curled around the zipper of her bag. She turned, her smile tight. "Okay," she said cautiously. "What's up?" I gestured to the table. "Sit." She hesitated for a second too long, then walked over and sat across from me. She placed her phone face down on the table, like always. My eyes flicked to it and back to her. "What's going on?" she asked. Her tone was light, but her eyes were scanning my face like she was trying to read a headline before it went live. I took a breath. "I found your old phone." The color drained from her face. Just a shade at first, but enough for me to see it. She blinked. "What?" "In your nightstand," I said. "The one you said you wiped before you upgraded. You didn't." Her lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came out. She looked down at the table, then back at me. "Mark," I held up a hand. Just don't start with a story. Don't insult me. Not after everything." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator. She pressed her palms flat against the table as if steadying herself. "I can explain," she whispered. "Explain what?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "The messages? The meetings at hotels? The perfume he says he can still smell on you? Or maybe the part where you called me clueless?" Her shoulders sagged. "It wasn't." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't tell me it wasn't what it looked like. Don't tell me you didn't mean it. You wrote it, Emily." I read it. Tears welled in her eyes, but her chin stayed up. "You were so cold," she said suddenly, her voice trembling with anger now. "Do you know what it's like to feel invisible in your own home? You stopped seeing me years ago, Mark. I was lonely. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I laughed bitterly. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something you don't mean. This wasn't a mistake, Emily. This was a campaign. Months of lies. Months of sneaking around. You built a whole other life while I was asleep in the next room. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said softly. But you did, I replied. My voice was low now, steady. You did. And then you let me sit here night after night, doubting myself. You let me think I was paranoid. You made me feel crazy for even noticing. Her tears started to fall then, streaking her makeup. She reached across the table for my hand, but I pulled it back. Please, she whispered. I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll end it. I'll block his number. Just don't give up on us. I stared at her, the woman I had built my life around, and felt nothing but an empty ache. The words she was saying, therapy, block his number, fix this, sounded like lines from a play we'd both seen before. Not a confession. Not a revelation. A negotiation. You don't get it, I said finally. There's nothing left to fix. Trust doesn't come back from this. UK*, let it. She shook her head, crying harder now. No, Mark, please, don't say that. I can't even sleep in the same bed as you, I said. Last night, I lay awake next to you knowing what I knew and felt like a stranger in my own home. Do you understand that? A stranger. Her sobs filled the room, but I felt strangely calm, like something inside me had already ended. I stood up. I'm going to the spare room, I said. You can have the bed. She reached for me again. Please, Mark. I stepped back. Don't. She collapsed against the table, her shoulders shaking. I turned and walked down the hall to the guest room, shutting the door quietly behind me. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and stared at nothing. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel like I was spiraling. I felt clear. Empty, yes, but clear. The marriage we had, the marriage I thought we had, was gone. All that was left was the echo. That night, as I lay on the floor of the guest room, I heard her moving through the house. Cupboards opening, water running, the muffled sound of her crying. At one point, the floor creaked outside my door. She stopped there for a moment, then moved away. I didn't get up. I didn't go to her. I stared at the ceiling until dawn and made my decision. No more half-truths. No more waiting for her to come clean. Tomorrow, I'd do something I'd never done before. I'd go straight to the source. I'd write to Thomas myself. I didn't sleep. Again. After I shut the door on Emily's sobbing and retreated into the guest room, sleep stayed just out of reach. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept replaying the conversation. Her accusations, her tears, her desperation. None of it felt real anymore. I lay on the floor with a pillow and an old throw blanket that barely covered my legs. It was cold, but I didn't care. The silence in that room felt better than the air in the bedroom we used to share. I couldn't be near her, not with everything I'd seen, not after what she admitted. By the time the first light of morning crept across the window, I already knew what I had to do. I needed to talk to him. Thomas, the man whose name now haunted my thoughts. The man who had replied to her messages at 2 a.m. The man who told her he missed her scent. The man who had been part of her world, *mately, while I sat 2 rooms away. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just needed the truth, the kind that came without mascara tears or emotional manipulations. I needed to hear it from the person who had nothing to lose. After showering and dressing like it was any other weekday, I waited for her to leave. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't come to find me. I heard the front door open and close at 7:47 a.m. Then silence. When I was sure she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. My hands hesitated over the keys. I didn't know where to begin, but I had his number. It was buried in the text thread I'd found on her old phone. The same phone she'd carelessly left in the drawer as if the past couldn't touch her. He had sent her his contact early on. Text me here, it's better than work email, he had written, followed by a winking emoji that made my stomach turn. I added his number into my contacts, not with his name, but just the word, closure. Then I sent the message. You don't know me. I'm Emily's husband. I've read the messages. I'm not here to threaten you or start a fight. I just want one honest answer. How far did it go? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the send button. Then I hit it. The message was marked as delivered. I placed the phone face down and walked into the living room, trying to distract myself by organizing shelves, wiping down surfaces that didn't need wiping, checking the fridge even though I wasn't hungry. I thought maybe he wouldn't answer. But less than 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. One message. Didn't expect to hear from you. No need for threats, I'll give it to you straight. No, we haven't slept together yet. But that line stopped matching a long time ago. She's the one who came to me, just so you know. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, reading it once, then again. The words felt sterile, almost smug, but they rang with the cruel clarity of someone who had no reason to lie. No physical betrayal. But every other line had already been crossed. The emotional int asterisk Macy. The secrecy. The late-night confessions. The lipstick, the perfume, the hotel rooms, the lies told to my face. If they hadn't crossed that final boundary yet, it wasn't out of loyalty. It was timing. Logistics. Maybe guilt. But not love. And the part that really stuck? She's the one who came to me. I read that line 5 more times. She had made the first move. All those arguments where she accused me of being distant. All those times she cried about feeling unseen. All those times she painted herself as the victim, claimed she was swept up in something she didn't mean to happen. That was the lie. She went looking for it. I felt hollow inside, like my chest was filled with static. The kind of weight that doesn't make you cry, just presses down until you can't breathe properly. I didn't respond to him. What else was there to say? He told me what I needed to hear. My marriage wasn't broken by accident. She had opened the door. He just walked through. I closed my phone and sat on the couch for what felt like an hour, just staring at nothing. The quiet of the house was suffocating now. Like the walls themselves had been watching this unfold and didn't know what to do with the silence that came after. When I finally moved, it was to pack. Not her things. Mine. I didn't slam drawers. I didn't throw clothes into bags or make dramatic exits. I folded shirts, zipped up a duffel, grabbed my essentials. The ones I needed to function for a while. Toothbrush, charger, passport, just in case. I left the bedroom untouched. Let her deal with it. I scribbled a note on the back of a grocery list that had been stuck to the fridge for a week. Don't worry. I won't be here tonight. You wanted space. Now you have it. That was all I wrote. Then I drove across town to my brother's apartment. He answered the door wearing gym shorts and a hoodie, confused and groggy. But one look at my face and he didn't ask any questions. Just stepped aside and said, "You staying a while?" "Yeah," I said. That night, Emily texted me 4 times. The first was casual. "Hey, you okay?" You didn't say anything before I left. The second, an hour later, had more urgency. "Mark, where are you?" Then, "Please talk to me. I'm freaking out." And finally, "I know you're mad. I know you read everything. But can we please talk? I want to fix this. I'll do anything." I didn't respond. I stared at the messages, one by one, like pieces of a puzzle I'd already finished. There was nothing to fix, nothing left to salvage. Whatever she was trying to save wasn't our marriage. It was the version of herself she wanted to keep in my eyes. But that person was gone. I turned off my phone and stared at the ceiling of my brother's guest room. The hum of the city outside the window loud and indifferent. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel like a man losing something. I felt like a man who had just walked away from a fire with the shirt on his back. At her mother's anniversary dinner, she smiled like nothing happened, until she introduced a man beside her. "This is Michael. He'll be staying with us a while." My blood froze. It was him, the same man, Thomas. Later that week, an envelope arrived at my brother's place. No return address. Inside, photos of them at a cafe weeks before the party. Laughter, kisses, lies. She hadn't stopped. She just changed the story. I moved into a quiet apartment across town. Therapy helped. So did silence. Then another envelope came, no photos this time. Just a note and a picture of a dog. He won't betray you. I went to the shelter the next morning and met Charlie. Golden eyes, calm, no questions. We've had coffee together every morning since. No more lies, just quiet, loyalty, and finally the beginning of something real.